You're listening to the BeeBusinessBee Podcast. Buzzing for business.
Hello and welcome to the BeeBusinessBee Podcast. Coming up in this week's show, we're joined by Christine Hamilton, who is the Acting Regional Director of the West Midlands UK Trade and Investment. He tells me about the benefits of exporting for UK businesses and the role that her organisation provides in supporting businesses. Also, find out why BHS is hoping its creditors can save its business, why Argos could be heading for your local supermarket, and what's the latest economic picture according to the latest data that's been released by the Chancellor with his budget report.
The BeeBusinessBee Podcast. The best business podcast not on the radio.
Loss-making high street retailer BHS is in the process of asking its creditors to agree to cut rents on its 164 stores. The company currently has debts of over £1.3 billion and was sold to the retail acquisitions for just £1 by the entrepreneur Philip Green. BHS believes that cutting rents is the only way the business can avoid going into administration and risking the jobs of its 10,000 employees. However, this is something that the landlords are not going to be pleased about, as many of these stores are in prime city centre locations. Of course, the changing nature of the UK retail market means that many former prime locations in city centres are no longer the desirable location they once were. This is due to the growth of the out-of-town shopping developments and online trading. This actually could work in BHS's favour, as it could make it more difficult for the landlords to find alternative retailers to fill the BHS stores, which could explain why BHS is confident that more than 50% of its landlords will agree to the deal. Of course, going forward, BHS needs to work on developing its USP, as many critics argue that the brand has lost its way in the retail world and needs investment to get back to its former glory. The long-running saga on who will buy Argos looks like it's finally been settled, with Sainsbury's running out the winner with a £1.4 billion offer to take over the owner of the Argos company Home Retail Group. The South African rival Steinhoff International withdrew from the takeover battle following this £1.4 million bid. However, there are fears amongst the employees that the synergy savings that have been suggested could mean that 330 stores which Argos owns could be closed when the lease expires on these, with Sainsbury's instead choosing to make use of their existing stores to house the Argos outlets. This of course allows Sainsbury's to diversify into new markets for the company, enabling them in some aspects to be able to compete with Tesco and Asda in their non-food item range. However, it's widely believed that the real motive behind this takeover is the fact that Sainsbury's wants to take advantage of the Argos distribution network, which is widely thought of as being hugely successful and could offer the organisation a real competitive advantage. It's not been hard to notice a budget this week, with all the talk that's been going on in the media about certain aspects of the content. However, alongside all this talk was some key information which we could look at from an economic perspective. We've learnt that inflation in the UK has remained at 0.3% in the UK. This suggests that the Bank of England is set to miss its target of 2% and is also an indicator that economic growth in the UK could be slower than hoped. However, there was an increase in the cost of food, but this was offset by the cost reduction in fuel, clearly linked to the falling oil prices. However, this is set to be corrected over the coming months. Inflation will probably soon also start to increase, as a national living wage is due to be implemented. This will see £7.20 per hour being offered to anybody who's over 25, and in the long term is sure to push up UK inflation. We've also learnt that the UK economy will grow more slowly over the next 5 years than expected. In November, the Office of Budget Responsibility suggested that figures were going to be more positive than what they are now. The previous forecast was that the economy will grow at 2.4% this year. However, it's now revised this and cut it to just 2%. Chancellor George Osborne has said that it's down to effectively a reduction in the UK's productivity. He also went on to announce that the government's going to be expecting to borrow less money this year. However, over the next 3 years, it will actually increase its borrowing. That is some of the key information that was included in the budget that you will have seen take place this week.
The BeeBusinessBee Podcast. The best business podcast not on the radio.
In this show, we're going to be joined by Christine Hamilton, who is the Acting Regional Director for the West Midlands for the UK Trade and Investment. Good afternoon, Christine.
Good afternoon.
Christine, I don't know if you could just start by explaining what the purpose of UK Trade and Investment actually is.
UK Trade Investment is a government organisation that helps companies to trade internationally, both helping them to export and to encourage more inward investment into the UK.
Excellent. So obviously it's very much based around encouraging trade within the UK and trying to grow the economy.
Yeah, it's all about encouraging more companies to take up the export challenge.
Out of interest, how much are exports expected to be worth to the UK economy, and what are the benefits to UK businesses of exporting and the economy in general?
Well, the figures I looked at today were in 2014, it was worth around $800 billion. So I think that's about £500 million.
It's quite a lot of money, that is.
But that's on both goods and services. The reason why it's important for companies to export is because companies that export are more profitable, more productive, more innovative, and that obviously is a good boost to the UK economy.
As an economy, are we actually a net importer or exporter?
Sorry, I didn't catch that, Mark.
As an economy, are we a net importer or exporter?
Unfortunately, we're a net importer, but we're working hard to try and make us a net exporter, and that really is what our job's about, to help that balance of trade, so the government can, and the country can be in surplus.
Excellent. I mean, you mentioned that balance of trade, and we've heard about balance of payments. I mean, some of the students are probably a bit confused what that term actually means. Can you explain to them what we mean by that term, balance of trade or balance of payments?
So I'm not an economist, so in my layman terms, it's about credits and debits, about more money coming. What we really want is more money coming into the country than goes out, because if we had that surplus, then obviously the government could then use that on other things to the benefit of UK citizens and companies. Excellent.
That's exactly how I try and explain it to the students that don't understand. It's about making sure the money's coming into our economy. People are using pound sterling rather than using other currencies from externally, and we're making our economies get larger. Out of interest, what are the current trends when it comes to imports and exports in the UK?
Unfortunately, at the moment, the exports are slightly down. We're still doing very well in the West Midlands, but as there has been a slight downward trend in exports, but also imports have been going down as well. We generally get figures for goods rather than goods and services. It's much more difficult, I think, to capture the services economy. But last year, we exported just over 279 million, 279, 279, oh gosh, 279, 300 million in exports of goods, and we imported 298,205 in imports of goods.
Wow, so yeah, we've still got some way to go to try and correct that, haven't we, at the moment?
We have, yeah, but I say that's what our role really, that role of us and many of the service sectors around the country, if you like, banks, accountants, lawyers, we're all trying to help companies to address that balance.
Excellent. Out of interest, in the UK in general, what products and services are our largest exports?
Could you repeat that question, sorry, Mark?
In the UK in general, what are our products and services that are our largest export, out of interest?
I tend to get figures for goods, and it tends to be around, certainly from the West Midlands, and for the economy as a whole, it is that export of machinery and transport equipment and manufactured goods. Although people don't think of us as an economy that still makes things, then we do, and certainly we do here in the West Midlands. On the service side, it's a whole range. It includes things like IT services, as well as those professional services and training and all those sort of things, and we certainly help a lot of those companies as well.
That's really interesting, because obviously, like you say there, that we still do export physical products, and we don't think of that, do we? We see ourselves as very much a tertiary sector economy nowadays, but like you say, in the West Midlands, we still very much manufacture lots of products and services and sell them out there. Yeah,
I mean, some of our top exporters are, we believe, although we don't get figures for individual companies, we suspect it is people like JLR and JCB and some of the big pottery companies as well, like Port Merion. So all doing very well.
Some of our local ones in Staffordshire, fantastic, isn't it, that we're flying the flag? Obviously, we sort of touched on export, and obviously one of our partners, theoretically, are people in the European Union, and I know I can't ask your political opinion on this, but do you think that we need to remain a member of the European Union from the point of view of an organisation for our exports?
I don't want to get into political debate, but obviously if you're a new exporter, then generally most small businesses don't look towards China's and South Americas, they still look to export to Ireland, France and Germany. And of our top 5 countries that we export to from the West Midlands, then 3 of them are those very countries: Germany, France, Irish Republic. So whether we're in the EU or out, then still those are going to remain important markets for our businesses.
That's really interesting. So in the West Midlands, then we do actually have in our top 5 list, and we export to basically 3 European countries. Then
we do on the goods side, yes, and I suspect it's not much different for services either.
Out of interest, do you know who the top one is? I've put you on the spot there.
The top one's USA. It has varied over the last couple of years between USA and China, and we are one of the few regions that have actual surplus trade to China.
Oh, fantastic! So we are actually exporting our products out to China. That's really good to know. Out of interest, what benefits do we get with trading with the EU? Because I know that obviously the media is full of stories at the moment about, whether it should be in or out, like we said already, and we're not going to go down there. But what benefits do you get as an organisation being able to trade with the EU countries?
I think the main benefit is that for a lot of small businesses, they see it as an easy place to trade with. We've just mentioned Ireland, which obviously speaks the same language, but I think people generally find it easy to just hop on a plane to go to Germany and France and do business. So that's a benefit, but that would remain whether we were in the EU, I think. But obviously other benefits we get, we're looking forward to hopefully having a European programme in this region that, again, will support a lot of our businesses to get on a plane and travel overseas, as well as putting on extra support for those businesses.
Do you think having the access to free markets as such is one of the real beneficiaries of being in the European Union? Because I know we're not part of the single currency. Do you think that holds us back in any way?
Again, this is an area we'll get into, but I will give an example. I was with the Canadians last week, and they were talking about the free market agreement they've just agreed with Europe and the benefit it'll be, and it will help boost our trade in sectors such as food and drink to Canada, which apparently has had tariffs in place before. So there are benefits of having free trade agreements, which currently are negotiated through the EU. Yeah,
okay, we'll leave it at that point now. I think we've covered a lot there, and hopefully our students are thinking now about the different aspects of barriers to entry to different markets as well. Let's think more about the West Midlands, because I know that you look after the West Midlands area. I mean, as a region, how do we perform with other parts of the UK when it comes to our imports and exports? Because I know we get a bit of a bashing, really. People always want to try and run the Midlands down, but we love it around here. So how do we perform?
I haven't looked at the import figures. I could do in a second, but on the export front, we're now the 3rd largest export region for goods. So we've been doing very well over the last few years. We again think that's on the back of some of our big companies like JLR and JCB and some of those that have been doing very well. So that's boosted our export of goods.
That's fantastic. So we are a centre, a hub where people want to invest into, haven't we? We've got some good transport links at the moment, haven't we? And some good developments taking place in the Midlands.
We have. And I've been working on some of the work Midlands Engine and looking at the trade plan there to join those 11 local enterprise partnerships together and how we can boost trade that way.
You mentioned local enterprise partnership, and it's just one area actually that's covered in education. And can you just explain a little bit more, sort of in layman's terms, what a local enterprise partnership is? Because I think it's one of the areas that students do get confused with.
My understanding it. So I only get involved on sort of the trade front of it, but it is that bringing together of an economic area for the benefit, and the government has sort of devolved some powers to those local enterprise partnerships so they can use the money to the best benefit of the businesses on the education front and other areas within that region.
Because I think there are some tax breaks, aren't there, for certain companies that sort of relocate, don't they, into these areas, I believe. Yeah, is that correct?
That's my understanding is that is it within the enterprise zones, and then there's also growth hubs within those local enterprise partnerships that again provide extra support for businesses and local people.
There's lots and lots of support out there and for businesses to tap into, isn't there, really, when we think about it on that sense, and to try and grow and help to obviously encourage our economy to develop and mature, really, and like I say, try and reverse that balance of payments.
Yeah, that's part of our role, really. Through a private sector contract with the local chambers of commerce, we have over 30 advisors around the region. They're the people that can help businesses not only with their exporting and through that export journey, but also help them negotiate that raft of partners that are out there, whether it be sort of point them towards their bank or accountants, or whether it be towards the growth hub and other local support.
Fantastic. More specifically looking in Staffordshire, that's where we're from. How do we perform compared to the other Midlands areas? I know in the press, it's another case, they try and make out that Staffordshire is hard done by in the Midlands, but how are we performing compared to our Midlands competitors?
Well, I was going to say, it's not, I don't look at the individual areas because I look at the whole West Midlands, but Staffordshire being an important part. We talked about some of the pottery companies that are doing very well, and JCB, and I kind of look at it as a whole, and it is about sort of regenerating the whole of the Midlands area, and so the Midlands engine will sort of widen it out. But Staffordshire, I'd say, is just a key part to me of the West Midlands, and it's about us helping all businesses across the whole of the region to export.
Excellent. I mean, I think you've touched on already mentioning some great examples of large exports we've got. Obviously, with Jaguar Land Rover, JCB, Port Merion, as you said, in the pottery industry. So I think you've covered that sort of aspect of it all. However, are there any specific grants or support available to like businesses in the Midlands, or any government support that you know of that they could tap into to help themselves establish and grow?
There's a range of support that's out there. So I've mentioned our advisors that are there to sort of handhold companies through their export journey, and I think it depends on where companies are based to a certain extent and sort of budgets that we have at the time. I mentioned European funding, so it's always worth companies talking to our advisors to see what is available at the time. But we offer a range of support to help them do their research before they go out to a market and get them out to a market, and our colleagues overseas in the embassies and consulates will support them when they're out there, and other private sector partners overseas to do that as well.
Yeah, because I suppose one of the great risks of, obviously, you know, you're sitting here now thinking, wow, exporting sounds really, really good. One of the real risks is that if you don't do your market research, you could flop, I suppose, and you've got to adapt to the culture, haven't you, of the market you're entering.
Yeah, and we can help point companies in the right direction for that. But research is key to make sure they're investing the resources they have in the right market for their company at the right time.
I mean, out of interest, if somebody is sitting here now listening to this podcast thinking, wow, exporting sounds really, really good, you know, what risk considerations do you think they need to take into account before they jump straight into it and try and go full out into exporting?
To a certain extent, exporting is very much like running their businesses here. They need to, like we said, do their research. They need to know what their USP is for their business. But there are the added sort of complication of most businesses about worrying about getting paid overseas, and, you know, about languages and culture and everything else. But again, we have specialist advisors that can help them with languages. We do master classes on getting companies sort of, if they're going to China, to learn a few words of Chinese and the culture on how to behave in that business. And also we have colleagues that can advise them on how to get paid, as well as other partners. So to a certain extent, it is that research, knowing where they want to go, and then we can help them with all the other information they need for a particular market.
That's really interesting, because I forgot myself about, you will have to take into account the culture and obviously make sure that if you're going to make an impression and try and do business, you've got to come across obviously with the language skills. And like you say, think about the exchange rate and considering that how much it's going to cost when it converts your currency.
Yeah.
So there are, like you say, there's quite a lot of factors, isn't there? I didn't think in that sense.
Again, I see that as a key thing about advisors working with businesses to kind of help them through that, all those things that they need to know, and point them in the direction of people that can help them. Because, as you said, there's a lot of help out there. It's trying to know which one's the right person to talk to at the right time.
Now, with the advent of e-commerce, I mean, some of my business students are doing an enterprise project at the moment. They've got this idea of, hopefully, they think they can go grand plan and export their products all over the world. But what advice and tips would you give them to make sure they're successful in being able to create this vision and deliver it if they want to export their product?
I think it is research. Make sure they know their product well, know what their USP for that product is, and which market might suit them. Again, we can advise them on that. And we can also, if they wanted to sell online, we have specialist e-commerce advisors to help them look at some of those marketplaces overseas, like Alibaba, if it's a suitable product for that. But not every market's suitable for every product, and not every way of selling. I was talking to a colleague this morning who was talking about sort of franchising overseas as a way of selling, and there's all different ways. And again, we can help them do that, as can our colleagues overseas, because it might be, use an agent in one market, it might be direct sell in another market, and again, we can help them to go through that.
That's really interesting. I mean, I've got myself there about like a franchise, and obviously students will be well aware that we can actually sell franchises, sell ideas, and that's a form of exporting, isn't it? And
it is, yeah.
Sometimes we think about selling purely products, but like you say, the UK is probably really, really good at selling services overseas and different ideas and ventures. That's fantastic. Thank you, Christine, for giving up some of your time to obviously join us today. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
And hopefully our students now have got a much better understanding of what help and support is available for exporters and why exporting is really critical to the overall success of our economy. And
I urge any of them that are thinking of setting their business and exporting to get in touch with us. You can find UKTI online. So it may not be us that can help them in a particular area, but we can certainly help them find a partner throughout the West Midlands that can help them do that.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining me today, Christine Hamilton, the Acting Regional Director of the West Midlands UK Trade and Investment.
Okay. You're welcome. Thanks. You're welcome. Thanks. You're welcome.
BeeBusinessBee Podcast Word of the Week.
This week's Word of the Week is inflation. Inflation is a general increase in price or a devaluation of currency over a period of time. Inflation is typically measured in the CPI or RPI, CPI standing for Consumer Price Index and RPI standing for Retail Price Index. The CPI tends to give a lower figure as it does not include some of the highly fluctuating features that the RPI includes. Economists, however, tend to think that the UK is more accurately reflected in the RPI measure of inflation. The Bank of England actually sets a CPI target for inflation of 2%, as this is a rate that they believe will not impact on consumer spending and create uncertainty and fear within markets. And that's why inflation is the BeeBusinessBee Word of the Week.
You're listening to the BeeBusinessBee Podcast. Buzzing for business.
Okay, thank you for joining me in this week's BeeBusinessBee Podcast. A special thanks to our special guest, Christine Hamilton, who joined me. Hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast. If you've got any feedback and any suggestions on how we can improve the podcast or anything you want to see included, don't forget to drop me a tweet. It's at BeeBusinessBee. Don't forget to click the subscribe button down below on the YouTube channel. And always remember that you can always email me via the website. Remember, it's direct to the hive at beebusinessbee.co.uk. And until next time, keep buzzing.
The BeeBusinessBee Podcast. The best business podcast